It's currently not being shared, Stacy. If you are sharing it,
I am not yet.
Okay.
No, I'm not yet.
Okay, while we're waiting, I can just go ahead and do introductions. Thanks everyone for bearing with us. This is, as Stacy said, our first online training with parents and community providers. So we're still getting all of our systems worked out. Here's just some basic Zoom information, just to draw your attention to the control bar at the bottom of your screen. There's a couple of different options for you to communicate with us. If you do have a specific question, it's great if you can use that Q&A option as opposed to the chat, but the chat is also a great way to kind of interact with us, give comments. We will ask you some questions as well. You can type that into the chat, but the Q&A is a good place that we will reference in case we don't get to a question. We can follow up later, but that will be an easy way for us to identify your questions. And as we said earlier, this webinar is going to be recorded, and we'll get the details out later about where to find that recording if you want to come back to it.
I actually have, I can provide that now if you'd like.
Stacy will provide that now.
So I have an automatic setting so that in 3 days, once the recording has been uploaded and we have all of the training materials that are being shared with you tonight, you will get an email that has all of that information, including the link for the recording.
Okay, great. So our next slide is just our title slide. I'll go ahead and introduce myself. I am Megan Watman-Turner. I'm the school psychologist in our early intervention and early childhood program, mostly in Washington County. So if you have a student that is within our Hillsborough or Tualatin early childhood center like service areas, then I would be the school psychologist that would be assigned to that site. Colleen Nolan is still on this slide, and I just wanted to give you all the heads up that she did a lot of work in helping us create this presentation. She's the school psychologist in Clatsop and Columbia counties, so she wasn't able to attend last minute. So again, we're being flexible in making sure we get all the information to you, but also bear with us as we're going through this process with a little bit of a last minute change. And I'll hand it over to Lisa.
Hi, I am Lisa Rigger, and I'm the school psychologist for the Beaverton area, and I also go out to the Tillamook service area. Well, I went out when I could. Now I just zoom in. And so that is our team for early childhood school psychologists, and yeah, we'll go ahead and get started. Next slide. We are going to look at today kind of some basic strategies for when we are going to want to have a positive start to our day, and to some ways that we can kind of set up and set up our day, set up our house with kids, or if you're a community provider, even in your classroom, some different things that we can just have to go to help us to not have some of those challenging behaviors that we sometimes have or worry about. So this is kind of just a basis of everything that we're doing, and then maybe at another point we have other trainings that can get a little more deep into maybe more challenging or individual type things. So next. So first I want to kind of just talk a little bit about why challenging behaviors occur. We are going to use right now the chat form area. And if you guys could, parents or community providers, just put in some chat of like, why do you think challenging behaviors occur in our homes and when we go out places? If you could just start putting a few things in the chat. That would be great. Sleep patterns, okay, frustration, being overstimulated, communication, children don't feel well, maybe diet, eating habits, communication, I see again, lack of a routine, not knowing what our expectations are, stress, yes, transitions. Great, so those are definitely a lot of good good things that we are going to address in this, and things to keep in mind of why the things occur. So Stacey, if you want to kind of click through the next behaviors here. So behaviors have a message, and sometimes what they could be saying is, I don't understand, I don't know what's going to happen next, I don't know how to solve the problem, you're talking too fast, I need to process, I don't have the words to tell you. And then other, like maybe there's something emotional that it's triggered, and that we all have behavior as a communication with that. You can keep going through those, Stacey.
Are you able to see the bottom part where it says behaviors communication?
Yeah.
Is that visible?
It is for me.
Okay, great.
Yes, so behaviors communication. Ready for the next slide. And we're, there we go. The next, so again, just children are developing, and especially kids that are in, have services, have a delay. A lot of times they're dealing with not having some of those skills developed that they maybe need in order to make good choices, or to be able to handle a stressful situation, or when they're tired, or not being able to maybe do things in an adaptive way or communication way. So we just like to really keep in mind that children do well if and when they can, is kind of a model that we like really try to focus on when we're working with kids. So we're
Okay,
gonna,
so, go ahead, Lisa.
Yeah, we're going to talk about reframing our thoughts, and Megan's going to kind of go through this.
And Stacey, if you can actually stop sharing for a minute and refresh your screen and then reshare. So we're going to fill out this form, and I actually took some of the feedback that you guys gave in terms of what we're thinking about why kids might be exhibiting some of these challenging behaviors. I do want to say already the comments that I saw in there, you guys are all thinking really great thoughts about behaviors in terms, there's a lot of things that contribute to behaviors, you know, sleep patterns, their, you know, regulation level, but there is also some reframe that we can do. I'm just waiting for Stacey.
I was going to say, are you ready for me to reshare?
Yeah, reshare.
Okay.
If it works, hopefully.
It did. I just need to get to the present and then share. How's that?
Perfect. So sometimes when kids are having challenging behaviors, we have an automatic reaction to those behaviors in terms of why we think they might be engaging in those challenging behaviors. So the first automatic thought we might have is that the child's trying to control the situation. They're trying to, you know, dictate what happens. They're trying to be in control. And while we do know that kids like to have some level of control, and that's part of what they're doing, a good way to reframe that thought is to think about the fact that really what that child is working on is developing more independence, and they're trying to communicate the desire to have more independence in their daily life or their decision making. Part of their control system is that, you know, they want to gain independence as they get older and be a part of their daily life decision making. So another one would be, she's trying to get my attention all the time. Again, this is something that really is rooted in a factual situation. Kids do want our attention, and some of the challenging behaviors that they engage in are, you know, stemming from this idea that they want to gain your attention. But a way to frame it more in the idea of a positive concept in terms of what skill the child may be working on, what the child might be wanting at the root of that child's development is more connection seeking. So instead of saying that they're trying to just get your attention, it's really about trying to connect with you and feel maybe secure, feel supported in the situation. It's really about that piece of connection, not just attention. And then these were a couple that you guys put in the chat. And so I just wanted to think about them a little bit further, even though, like I said, you guys had really good answers in general about where these behaviors are stemming from. A lack of routine is certainly something that can impact a child's behavior, and we're going to talk more today about how to establish positive routines with our kids. But one thing to think about is with that lack of routine, that is an environmental factor. Within the child, one thing that we want to think about is that lack of routine can be that they don't know what's happening next. They might not know what the expectations are. So if we look at our daily schedules, that lack of routine could really be reframed in a piece of, we need to help teach our child, or teach our children in our classroom or in our house, how to behave in terms of the daily schedule, which means what do they know is coming next? Do they know what is expected of us? So that's all kind of the strategies we're going to continue to talk about. And that reframing is really focusing on what skills and knowledge can we help them learn in order to decrease the likelihood of some of these behaviors. And then again, another great one that someone wrote in is children do not feel understood. And that piece in kind of reframing our thoughts about skills is really focusing on the fact that kids are using behaviors as communication. So they don't have skills to necessarily communicate everything they want or need without using challenging behaviors at this point. And so that's another opportunity to really focus on helping them build those skills.
Great. So again, you guys are doing great with reframing some of that stuff, but just a couple graphics about just kind of explaining that a little bit more, that like when we have a child and they don't know how to know the alphabet, or they don't know how to swim or tie their shoes, we teach them. We know that we don't expect them to just know those things. And so we take the time to teach them those pieces. But sometimes when they don't behave, sometimes we tend to go right to wanting to maybe, you know, punish them or scold them or get upset at them. And we just want to like make sure that we're really thinking about like, how can we teach them those skills they need in order to behave or do act how they should in the situations. And the next slide also is just kind of, it looks more at that behavior and reframing and like in the different skills that they need to have. A lot of like knowing how to transition to different activities, how to share, how to ask for help, how to express our emotions and how to communicate, and wanting to help them know those things and learn those skills. And so that's kind of what we're gonna focus on today, is just some basics, skills that we can help teach our kids, and so that they can be more successful in behaving and managing some of those frustrating circumstances. So next we are going to talk about, we're going to kind of go through the poster, and kind of go that we started at the beginning. So that's kind of the framework, and then kind of at the end talk a little bit more about some calming and self-regulation skills that we can have. So I'll let Megan go back over. This is her part.
Yeah, and I just want to let everyone know that I did put a link to the website where you can get the full poster online and look at that as a reference if you want to. That's in the chat in both English and Spanish, if you want to check that one out. So the first idea that poster really talks about is giving choices. And that concept, you can go ahead and go to the next slide, Stacy. The concept is really kind of what I was already referencing in terms of helping kids communicate their preferences throughout the day and then giving them access to those preferences. So it is a piece of developing a child's independence. You know, independence is something that we really want young adults and adults to have that skill to develop in themselves as they grow older. But as a child, it can be hard for parents and teachers to really want to kind of give them that level of independence, because it means some changes in how we structure our environment. So when we are able to give kids choices, allow them to communicate what they're interested in, and we actually honor their preferences, it provides them with opportunities that are activities that they enjoy, that they're more likely to participate in, and that they're more likely to feel honored in their preferences being heard. So choices is a prevention strategy. We're really talking about how to increase kids' engagement and enjoyment in their everyday activities, because that decreases the likelihood of what we would say is a problem arising for the kid, something that they don't like, something that is challenging for them. If we're helping them find things that they enjoy and like and honoring their desires throughout the day, we can decrease that likelihood of some of their challenging behaviors coming up. So really, like I said earlier, behaviors can communicate the child's desire for independence. Giving them choices can empower the kids that we work with. It's also a way to communicate with them in a way that both empowers them, but also helps us to get our expectations met by giving them a choice in the matter. So, do you want to hold my finger or my hand when we cross the street? So again, holding a hand to cross the street might be something that the child doesn't really want to do all the time, but allowing them to have a choice makes it more likely that they might choose one of those choices and participate in the activity that we would like them to do. We can ask them at times, do you want to walk to your room, or can I carry you? Again, we want the child to go to their room, but we're giving them the choice to be independent or have us assist them. Do you want me to get you more snack, or would you like to get it yourself? Do you want to play for 1 more minute or 2 more minutes? Again, we want them to stop playing, but if we give them a choice, a lot of the times kids might respond by answering our choice options and choosing the one that they're interested in. Do you want to sit next to your sister at dinner or dad? So those are some ways to really build in that choice to help your expectations still be met, but give the child a little bit more wiggle room in being able to state their independence and empower them. So just thinking about a lot of the kids that we work with at our sites, a lot of your kids, there may be lagging skills in terms of their communication skills. A lot of our kids, any 5-year-old or younger is still developing their communication skills, but some of our kids really respond better if we are matching our communication strategies with the child's developmental needs. So we want to think about, when we're giving choices, that we're offering language choices that are really understandable or accessible to them. So instead of saying, oh, it's time for a snack, would you rather have an apple or an orange today? You could just say, which one do you want? And hold out the 2 options. Which one? Or apple or orange? Getting dressed, thinking about how you could develop some of these choices into your everyday routines. Do you want the blue shirt or the yellow shirt today? Again, you can just say yellow or blue, or you can even hold up the shirts as a physical cue for the child to make that choice. So for some kids, especially if they're already starting to get a little bit upset, those choices, if we offer them verbally, they might not necessarily respond. But sometimes if you use a visual or a physical object, they might respond. And some of our kids are already using choice boards. You might have a service coordinator that has helped you create a choice board in your home. It's another great way to offer a choice board, to offer those visuals so that you're not necessarily having to verbally provide the choices. The kids have those choices and the independence built in throughout their day. So playtime, getting dressed, outside activities. These are times you could potentially have a visual choice board so the kids can start to work on those independent skills without you having to necessarily guide that independence. Another thing to think about when we're thinking about choices is being aware of implied choices. So a lot of times, both in school and at home, teachers and parents have the propensity to ask questions that aren't really an option, whether the child's going to do it or not. So, are you ready to go to bed? We want them to go to bed. We just ask them if they're ready to go to bed. It's very likely that a child might say, no, I'm not ready to go to bed. So think about some of those opportunities throughout the day, those routines, where you might be asking some of those questions and try and reframe it, such as, it's time for bed. Do you want to brush your teeth or put on your PJs first? So we're not making the bedtime a choice, but we are making, what are they going to do next, a choice. You can also, again, use visuals instead of verbally offering those choices. So I know many of you are probably thinking, well, my kid isn't going to make a choice if I give them the choices. It's a common factor that happens with a lot of our kids. They might say, no, I don't want either of those things. That happens for sure. And so here's a couple of options just to, again, give you a little bit more flexibility if that should happen to you when you're offering the choices. The first one is really just make sure that we're giving kids time to process. So sometimes either they're taking time to process that language, or they're taking time to shift from one activity to the other. So it's okay for us to offer a choice and then give them a little bit of a buffer to make that choice before we step in. So we can tell them, okay, I'll wait, no problem. So you're honoring, again, their independence, that you're waiting for them to make a decision, they have time, and that then you will respond when they are ready and willing to answer the question. This also might happen, and that is that the child might come up with a third alternative choice that you did not offer. Very likely. So you have to kind of consider to yourself, what is your ultimate decision maker? Like what areas are flexible and what are not? So if you're giving a choice and, you know, here's your apple or your orange, and the kid's like, I want a banana, you know, maybe that's an opportunity to say, that's a great idea. Again, honor their decision, honor their choices when it's possible. But then things like, do you want 1 minute or 2 minutes more playtime? And they say, I want 30 more minutes. Well, that's not a choice today. And I can choose for you is another option that you can implement. So it's really up to you in terms of when you're going to say, you know, today these are the only two choices, versus sometimes it's great for kids to have their own idea because it really, again, lets them assert their independence.
So next we want to look at, I think in the chat earlier, somebody said that a reason that behaviors can occur is because they don't know the expectations. So we want to talk a little bit about that, and that sometimes we call these the rules, or, you know, what is expected. And so we want to look at that a little bit more in depth. So at school, we often have our rules that, you know, the kids are supposed to follow. In here, we at the early childhood sites, and a lot of early childhood sites that we use, like be safe, be a worker, be friendly, and we have those things really defined as to what those mean. You know, use your walking feet, hold hands to the bus, you know, be a worker, use your calm body, try your best, and then, you know, share with your friends or play together, say hi, smile at others. And those are usually like posted all over the place and talked about in the classroom. And so kids really a lot of times know what is expected when they come into the school room or to the building, or now in the virtual world, a lot of teachers on their circle times and times that they will give the expectations of what is expected when they're sitting in front of Zoom and when they can participate, and trying to give those directions and those expectations. And so next, we one of the reasons that we want to do this, and that we do this in school, and that, you know, we want you to have to be able to do this at home, is that that's what the research tells us. If the children know what is expected to do, what they're expected to do, and how it looks, and how to do it, then they're much less likely to engage in problem behaviors or challenging behaviors. So one of the things we want to do is to set those expectations. And when you think about your house and your routines for the day, and now that, you know, a lot of kids are home a lot more, there's a lot more different times during the day that we need to set those expectations. And there's a lot, like in the car, and maybe when they're using a device, when you go to the store, different times of the day, how the morning routine. And so it's really good to have those expectations and to review those rules ahead of time with your child, whether it be when it's time to go to bed, or when it's time to maybe eat or go outside and play, go to the park. Setting up those expectations ahead of time and keeping them clear and simple as you talk to them about them. One of the things we want to make sure that we do is have clear expectations. And so some of the like 3 key elements that we want to make sure they do is first, like when we're talking to them, is using their name and say, Amanda, put your book on the floor. What you want to be very specific and tell them exactly what you want them to do. So Philip, first wash your hands, then we'll eat. And instead of just being more vague, like get ready for dinner, that they are not as likely to know what is expected of them as if you actually tell them what that means to get ready for dinner. How are they supposed to follow those steps? First, you need to do this, and then you need to wait and you can do the next thing. And in our example, you can ask for the toy, and then you need to wait for Erica to answer you. So being really good about exactly like laying it out, narrating, telling them what is expected, and maybe even giving them the words to use sometimes. So the other thing we want to talk about, that transitions are something that is very difficult for kids to sometimes really handle and to do well and smoothly. And transitions can look like lots of different things that are ending or changing. So that is when you go to someplace, go to the park or go to the store, but it also can be moving from dinner to playtime, or finishing up playtime and cleaning up and then getting ready to go do something else. Maybe it's brushing your teeth and then taking a bath. Each one of those would be considered a transition every time you're changing to do something different. So we're going to talk about some different ways to help make those maybe a little bit smoother. And why these can be difficult. We kind of talked about that, came up in the chat. Sometimes they're tired, sometimes they're hungry, sometimes they're confused. They don't know what's coming next. Often it's children, when it's something fun, when you're playing, when you're at the park, they don't want to end that activity. And then sometimes, again, those delays that some kids have in their skills, whether it be their communication skills or maybe their ability to regulate their emotions or understand their emotions, or problem solve, that those can be make transitions more difficult. And so doing a little bit of planning accordingly can really help avoid problems during that time. A few things just to prevent during transitions. One thing is to try to have a consistent daily schedule, and so that they know and can learn and expect some of those transitions. I know sometimes, in our daily lives, that's hard to do, but if we can try to keep it a little bit that they are consistent with it, that they could, that helps them. Using strategies to signal that a transition is coming. And we'll talk a little bit more about some of those things. Planning ahead, having materials ready for what's coming next. Sometimes the problems come when the child has to wait. And so if the next thing is ready for when they transition, you'll have less problems. And maybe having some of those materials or activities ready that for those transitions and the schedules and things. Just trying to be kind of aware of those things before you get into the middle of the transition and problems start happening. So if you can kind of plan ahead, it'll definitely go a little bit smoother. So, and so then we'll kind of, on the next slide. So here's some just different strategies that we can use to support these transitions. And again, all of this, or at least most of the stuff I've been talking about, there's a lot of great resources, and we'll share it again at the Challenging Behavior website that we've gotten a lot of these things from, and we will be sharing those links with you and stuff. So know that, like, if you want to go back and look at this or learn more about it, that there's a great website for that. So again, using a timer, sometimes just kids needing to know what's coming up next and can see it and hear it, that helps with that transition. It also, I mean, kind of helps in that you can blame it on the timer, you know, like, sorry, the timer's done, we have to finish playing now, and kind of takes you out of the equation. Provide a verbal warning that one activity is going to end and another one's going to begin. So kind of, again, just emphasizing that, like, okay, we're going to finish the book and then we're going to go brush our teeth and go to bed. Using that first then language is always good. So that, again, they know what they're doing now, and then they know what's coming up next. First pick up your toys, then we can have a snack. And then sometimes it's good to make the transition fun. You know, like, especially when it's something that maybe, you know, not as fun to do, like if you're leaving the park or finishing playing, you know, sometimes you can make a game out of it, or you can, like, let's skip to the car, or you know, I bet you can beat me there, or beat me to the next place, or something, to kind of just try to make some of those transitions a little bit more fun for them. Another one is that sometimes that is helpful for kids is to, like, bring a transition item with them. Sometimes it's really hard for them, you know, to maybe put that last toy away or to leave their favorite stuffed animal. And so, you know, making that object or that animal a part of that, that we can take with us, and, like, hey, I bet, you know, your fire truck would like to come too, and they can sit next to you. Another one is, like, singing a song, or a silly or familiar song. There's also, I mean, on YouTube or other places online, there's tons of things that you can look up and find the cleanup song, or you can just pick, like, a favorite song, like if they're really into Baby Shark, that maybe whenever we play Baby Shark, that means we're cleaning up our toys, or, you know, something like that. Like, sometimes in using something consistently can kind of help them cue them that, like, oh, this is cleanup time, so I know I have to get it done by the time this song's up, or whatever, and it just makes it more fun. And then using those visual supports, I think that's something that you'll kind of hear throughout this whole presentation, is that with kids, and adults, I mean, that we need those visuals too. Just like if we were doing this presentation and all I did was you were just seeing me talk the entire time and didn't have any slides or anything, I think a lot of people would just tune me out after a little while. Maybe you are anyway, but when you have a visual to go with it, it definitely makes it more right there, and you're ready to do it, and you're actually hear it and see it. And giving your child a job to do during that transition. They like to be helpers, you know, like giving him that little extra thing, like, oh, I really need you to help me put the napkins on the table, or, you know, when we get inside, can you hang up my bag from the store, or my purse, or something, and give them that little thing that makes them feel important, and that they can be a part of that transition and help with that. So those are some different ways to kind of help with that. And sometimes with transitions, we need to think about, like, are there skills that we need to teach them for understanding the directions, or the skills that they are needing to do? Because, you know, if we're asking them something that they don't necessarily know how to do or aren't comfortable with, then you're going to get more resistance. Even that can be with, like, where they need to put toys away, like practicing, like, the Legos go in this bin, and the cars go over in this bin. Let's practice doing that. And so, yeah, we need to practice that. We need to make sure they know how to do those things. And then another thing to kind of keep working on is that teaching them some of those emotions and feelings that they're having when they are maybe frustrated or confused, or they don't want to leave the park, they're sad, or maybe they're really frustrated because they can't get their shoe on right. And so giving them those words that say like, it looks like you're really frustrated or you're really mad, let me help you, or and giving him those kind of skills to help with that, so that you can kind of try to help them communicate better what their needs are in those transitions.
Okay, now we get to talk about one of my favorite things, which is celebrating when kids do great things. And yes, it's a little bit corny to really talk about being so positive, but it makes a huge difference for teachers, parents, and for the kid when we really are working on seeing those opportunities, finding those opportunities to give kids that positive feedback. So, the flyer example is, wow, thanks for trying something new. I hope you feel proud when you try new things. So again, both celebrating what the kid did, but also helping them feel proud about themselves in that process. So the idea behind positive feedback is that it really makes it more likely that people will do the same thing again. If you think about in your job or even in your relationships with your family or partner, if you get positive feedback for doing something, it usually makes you more likely to want to do that same thing again. So the same thing goes for our kids. Positive reinforcement is more powerful than punishment. Even thinking about as adults, the speeding tickets, does that necessarily really impact how adults drive and whether or not we're going to speed? Maybe, but does it work as well as if, say, you didn't speed for a year, you would get $1,000 bonus? That might work better. So just thinking about as adults, we really enjoy that positive reinforcement as well. It impacts our behavior. And so the same thing goes for our kids and the people that are around our kids all day, parents, teachers, all of us at the ESD. It's really important for us to take that time to celebrate when they're doing great things, because it helps them know that whatever behaviors they were displaying are things that we'd love to see again, and it helps them feel more proud about how they're interacting with us, how they're interacting with other people. So when we use that positive reinforcement, you want to tell a child very specifically what you saw or heard that you liked. Good job is great. Saying good job, saying wow, those things are all great, and it is definitely a relationship builder, but it doesn't necessarily help the child know exactly what you liked that they saw. So something like, for example, you are being so kind by giving your brother a turn. Or again, I feel proud of you. Do you feel proud that you gave your brother a turn? You must be feeling proud about yourself. So like giving the kids that specific example of what they did, how you feel, and how they might be feeling really helps build that self-esteem and that confidence in knowing what adults want to see more of in the future. For some kids, just giving a gesture can be great. Some of our kids giving a high five or a hug or a fist bump, thumbs up by itself can be positively reinforcing. It's great if you can pair it with the language as well. But I think, especially right now during the pandemic, we're seeing a lot of kids that are maybe more shy or have social worries, and sometimes giving that call out of praising a kid in front of other kids might not be the best for every kid. Just a high five or a hug or a gesture is something that can give kids that positive reinforcement in a way that might be more receivable to them and feel better to them. It's also just really important to try and work on being as sincere as possible. Our kids are really monitoring our emotional well-being, our emotional output of what we are displaying to them. So making sure we're giving those sincere compliments that they can hear in our voice that we really are proud of them, that we're excited in how they're displaying positive social skills, positive problem-solving skills, so that they know that we really care about what they were doing and how they were doing it. So again, it really depends on the kid that you are working with or the kid that you have in your household. For some kids, having actual concrete reinforcements as reminder might be a more powerful system. I wouldn't say that you want to replace that sticker chart for giving that verbal praise or feedback, because the verbal piece is really important to, again, help kids understand what they were doing well. But for some kids, having that reward system can be that extra incentive that really makes some of the concepts stick. So you might use things like sticker charts, or you could also do something like have a jar that has marbles in it, pom-poms in it. When they fill up that jar or that container, that they get an even bigger prize. I think one of the most important things, and something we spend a lot of time thinking about at school when we are working on reinforcement systems, is making sure that when we create that concept of a reinforcement system, we're using achievable goals and expectations for the kids to earn the reinforcers. So for example, I'm thinking about like a kid who might be hitting, setting a goal of, if you don't, or if you are safe for the whole day, you don't hit for the entire day, then we will give you a sticker, or then you will get to have an ice cream. That goal is a pretty big goal for a 3, 4, 5-year-old to accomplish. Instead, working on highlighting those times when you're seeing them have a safe body. So, wow, you were just playing with your brother, you had a safe body. I really loved how you were being so kind with your brother. Giving those specific examples throughout the day, even if it's for some of our kids who might be aggressive frequently, if it's 2 minutes, if it's 5 minutes, continually giving those stickers at times that is actually accomplishable for them to meet that goal of being safe. So it's a time frame that they can really achieve, because the point of reinforcer systems is for kids to actually earn the reinforcer. So you want to make sure that you're setting goals so that kids can feel accomplished towards that goal. So it can be short or long, just kind of focus on what makes sense for your kid in terms of the expectation. And then think about, you don't necessarily want a kid to earn something big necessarily every 5 minutes that they're using a safe body. And that's when the stickers or marbles might be a better option, because then they can work up to a bigger prize, but they're still getting that feedback on an ongoing basis. You also want to make sure that the reinforcement is meaningful to the kid. It's not really going to work as a behavior change technique if the kid isn't actually motivated by the reinforcement that you choose. So, some kids really like fruit snacks, some kids don't really care about fruit snacks. That might not be something we want to give them as a reward. And then also making sure that it is immediate. Again, talking to your kid at the end of the day about their behavior for the whole day, celebrating all the great things they did in the whole day, that is great, and it's really great for your relationship building, and it's really positive to have that type of discussion. But kids aren't going to necessarily remember everything that happened in the whole day. So we want to take that moment to make that small activity they engaged in, be it safe body, good listening ears, that they were, really showing some positive social skills, that they were a great problem solver. Look for those small moments when you see it at that time and give them the reinforcement immediately, because that helps conceptualize for them that they really were doing in that moment something that was great.
Yeah, so now we're going to go back and kind of talk a little bit more about setting up those expectations and talking about telling them what we expect of them, and kind of a little bit more on how some ways that we can do that. When we're talking to children and we're giving them directions or expectations of what we want, there's a few things that we want to think about. We don't want to assume that they know what you want. So we want to give very clear directions. We want to use your walking feet with quiet mouths. First clean up, then we get to go to the movie. we want to work on speaking in positive terms or in things that you want them to do, instead of don't color on the tables or stop running, you know. Say what you want them to do, like color on the paper, and we need to walk in the hall, or we need to walk on the sidewalk, and so that they are hearing what you want. Because a lot of times if you're saying it in the negative way and you're like, stop running, what they heard was running, okay, I'll run more. And so we want to make sure that they're hearing what you want them to hear and what you want them to do. And using those language to model what you want and want to talk to them about. Please give me the scissors, and how you would want them to talk to others. But also keeping that language simple, and reducing our language, especially if a child maybe does struggle with communication and processing. If it takes them a little bit longer, then we want to really try to keep it simple into what you need, instead of saying a really long sentence about, I'm here, like, you know, we need to be quiet because we are in the library and the library has rules to be quiet and others are trying to read and do their work. Like the kid, you know, they stopped listening to you 10 words ago. But just telling them, quiet voices, please. I mean, there are kids who will ask and want to know all of that. And maybe, you know, so it definitely is individualized. Like if your kid is one of those that asks, you know, the why all the time, and they want a little more explanation, that's fine. But especially when you're trying to get something across quickly and you just are trying to set those expectations up, just trying to keep those things simple and on a positive terms, is going to be your best way to get that across. Also, when we're doing this, we want to make a statement. We were I know Megan talked about this a little bit before, but that like when you ask a question, you're giving them the opportunity to say no. And so, I mean, if you want to ask them, I mean, are you ready to go home now? Then you need to be ready for like, no, I'm not ready to go home, and be okay with that. Otherwise, you need to state it in a statement, like we have 5 more minutes and then we're going to go home. Or, you know, if you've asked, do you want to give your brother a turn? And sometimes I think like that we don't even realize that we say so many things in a question. And because when I'm just like saying this, I'm like, why would we even ask that? But I mean, I think that like if you stop and really listen to yourself when you're interacting, like we just do that unconsciously a lot of times. So we just kind of phrase things as a question. Instead, we want to like make sure that we're thinking about that and just thinking about some of our patterns that we do, and try to kind of change some of those so that you are more making those statements and giving them those clear expectations of it's time to clean up for lunch, let's set a timer, and really just framing those in form of a statement. One other thing that works really well in the classroom, but it also is a great thing to have at home, is what we call first then boards. And we've kind of talked about this concept of talking about first we need to clean up, and then we get to watch TV. And so these can be used in a variety of settings and can just be really helpful to give those kids those visual cues. They can definitely assist in transitions. They can assist in some routines. So they break up things into smaller steps. When you think about even a simple thing is like brushing your teeth, that there's a lot of steps even just to brushing your teeth. That you get your toothbrush, then maybe you run it under water, then you put the toothpaste on, then you put it in your mouth. So and hopefully, you know, you don't have to break it up quite that much, but just to think that sometimes for kids, that can be really overwhelming, and they need things broken up into what they need to do. So it encourages them to complete tasks sometimes it's really good for them. They see that and they're like, okay, if I get this done, then I get to go do this other thing that's more fun. And so that's a way to use the first then boards. And on the next slide, I talk a little bit about how to use them. You want to have them available, and you want to have them like ready to go. And you can, like I said, we have different, there's a lot of different places to like find resources. I was talking about that Challenging Behavior website that has a lot of the visuals for this and the outlines for it. And also I'm going to, any of these visuals and different things that if you are a parent that has a child in special education here and you have a service coordinator, you can definitely talk to them about getting some of these resources, or emailing one of us too would work, and we can try to help you get those things that you need. So just want to make sure that, like, if it seems like, oh, there's all these great things, but I will never have time to do those or find it, let us know, because we definitely want to help you be able to use some of these things. So you want to be able to use these. There's lots of different ways. You can flip over the picture. You can Velcro them, use different ways to stick them to the board and be able to change them for the different activities that you need. And then when they've done the thing and they've done the first thing and then they get to play, celebrate, acknowledge it, like what Megan was talking about, and giving the positive feedback that they did it, they got their thing done, and they get to go to the next thing that they want to do maybe a little bit more. So another thing is just that we want to help kids know is to know what is going to happen, and we want to look at a few different ways on how we can help that in our daily routines and as we go about our day. So again, using visuals. Visuals can definitely help to prevent those challenging behaviors. They are there for when the children, once you've said it, then they can also still see it. It's still there. It's a reminder of that direction that you just gave. And it assists children in knowing exactly what is expected of them. And so it gives them those cues and helps them learn those behaviors and those skills that they need. And using visuals can really be a good way to help with that. So visual schedules is a great way to help at home. And especially now when we have our kids at home, really often, sometimes that concept of time and when things should be gets difficult, especially if you don't have as much of a routine of going maybe to school and then going, or to childcare, or, doing some of those things where you get to like actually go do things and have things in a more predictable way. So this can help break up a day too, like, so that you can, kids kind of know what's happening and they don't get lost in like, it feels like, it's still breakfast time, but it's actually like, it's actually lunch. And so kind of just helping them with that. And so these kind of can help them with the predictability of knowing what's going to happen that day, and consistency of the schedule, and that just kind of knowing what their day will look like. And you can do these, there's lots of different ways. I'll show you a few different examples of some of these schedules that you can make it fun for your family. You can have different cards that can, you can swap in for, when there is something unexpected, or, if you're going to have an art activity that day, or if you're going to go for a walk, or go to the park. And so you can kind of have those things, and it really helps kids to just be able to kind of have a plan for their day and to know what is coming. So just a little bit in making that visual schedule. Here's a couple more designs that you could use in your house. I've also seen ones where, you know, you could put it and use like a paper or a clothespin to clip down onto where it is. But so you want to identify when you maybe need that visual schedule, what are the main routines, the main things that you want them to make sure that they know that you do, list out those steps, print out and cut out the appropriate visual cards. Again, this website has a lot of those, but also, I mean, if you just go in and look, you know, in Google Images, you can find about anything. Or like I said, your service provider, we have access to a lot of different schedules that can already be made up, or cards that we could help you get. Print and cut those out. Create the one that works for you and your family, whether it be a book or something, you know. I think the thing that you want to just make sure that it's somewhere out in a place where you can see it and that the kids can see it, that it's at eye level. If you want them to be, which makes it even better, if they can be a part of maybe changing the cards or saying when it's done, and then you want to have it, you know, something that they are able to do easily and be able to manage that. So just keeping in mind, but you can be very creative in however you want to do that. So also you can do like the visuals for the whole day, or there's also lots of different ones for specific routines that you could have at different parts of your house, whether it be going to the bathroom or that bedtime routine, or maybe setting the table. You know, you can kind of do a visual routine for about anything. Driving in the car, or, you know, going on a walk to the park, all those different things that, especially if it's something that's difficult for a kid, that that might help them just to know exactly what they need to do, so they don't have to think through that. Sometimes that's hard in a kid who has trouble maybe like with problem solving or planning out what they should be doing next, and they just kind of get stuck. And so these can just really help kids know what the next step is. So when you're using your visual schedule, you know, like you can create it and can look beautiful, but if you don't use it, then it's not going to be very helpful. So you want to teach your child how to use that schedule, explain it to them, demonstrate it, make it fun, refer to it throughout the day. When you're done with breakfast, be like, hey, we just finished our breakfast. What's next on the schedule? Let's go check it, and go check it throughout the day so that they can, excuse me, so you are referring to it all day and they kind of can see what's coming up. Making it active and having them be able to kind of take the card off or turn it over or move the clothespin, whatever way you want to do it. And then again, that celebrating, that positive feedback of like, hey, look at that, we finished these 3 things. Look what we get to do next. Next on the schedule is you're playing with Legos, and that's something you're really excited about. So that it can definitely be a way to kind of like get them excited about what's coming up next, or get them through maybe something they don't want to do to see what's coming up next in the schedule.
Okay.
I just wondered, Megan, if we wanted to take a couple minutes for if anybody had some questions or something, or comments. I know we've been talking a lot. And that was kind of, we finished going through the poster of things to kind of use to set up your day. And just wanted to kind of like, if anybody had a couple comments or questions before we move on, just wanted to kind of maybe open that up for that. If not, we can just keep moving, so.
Give a minute in case someone is still typing a question.
So they're saying that the questions are not visible, even if you put it to everyone.
Yeah, Lori, we also are not seeing in very many specific questions. There were a couple, yes.
Yeah, for people that are posting in the chat, if you click on the little arrow where it says to and you select all panelists and attendees, then it will go to everyone. If you prefer to send your message directly to the panelists, you can select that as well. But yeah, so far we haven't had any chatter in the chat box since about 7:15, so I think we're okay.
But yes, you guys didn't see all of each other's great answers to our first question, unfortunately. But as I said, there were really a lot of positive skill-based answers in there. And the one question that I did answer, which you probably saw my answer, but not the question, was about one of our providers was talking about collaborative problem solving, which is a great approach that we use in our centers. And it's actually, I was going to talk about at the end, but it is an approach that we're planning on providing another parent training series around. And collaborative problem solving is really going to expand on that piece of kids still being in the process of developing their skills that really help them manage their behaviors, manage navigating their worlds, and how we as adults can help problem solve with them some of the problems that occur throughout their day and how we can support them in that problem solving. So we'll definitely be sending out information about collaborative problem solving to all of our families for that parent training series that will be happening in the later in the winter to spring. Okay, well, no questions at this point. I'm going to talk about a few more strategies. We still have a little bit of time, so if anyone has a question while I'm continuing to talk about these last few strategies, feel free to write that in the question and answer or write a comment in the chat. So one of the things that we recognized in providing this training is that we're talking a lot about some strategies to prevent challenging behaviors. We do also want to acknowledge that all kids in this age range of any skill development, no matter if they're experiencing developmental delay or not, all kids exhibit challenging behaviors when they are young to some degree. So there's going to be times when kids need extra support, that they are exhibiting challenging behaviors. Those times are still going to come up, and they may come up frequently or they may come up sometimes, but we want to make sure that we give you a few more ideas of how to support kids when they really are continuing to exhibit those challenging behaviors, despite all of the structure and positive intentions that you're putting in throughout your day. So you can go ahead, Stacy. So one of the important things to think about is that when we are trying to help kids regulate their emotions, one of the first places to start is honestly helping kids understand their emotions, learning an emotional vocabulary, being able to self-recognize when they're feeling different feelings. It might not seem like the first place to start in terms of behavior supports, but really, if you think about yourself as an adult, a time that you might have been extremely angry to the point of, I need to go on a walk right now, or I can't keep talking to you right now. That really took that skill of being able to recognize, I am feeling mad and I need to make a different choice for myself. Kids don't have that skill yet for the most part. When they get really angry, their emotional part of their brain takes over. So we as adults can help support them learning some of those words to express their emotions, even if it's nonverbal, being able to point to pictures to express their emotions. Building their emotional vocabulary will really help the kids label their feelings so that in the long run, they can communicate, I feel mad, I feel happy, I feel sad, I feel worried. All of those things could be potentially a replacement to some of the challenging behaviors they may be engaged in right now, because they're able to communicate how they feel through words or pictures or pointing in a way that right now they might be, engaging in tantrum behaviors, hitting when they're mad or frustrated to let us know that they're mad. So working on that piece of developing our emotional vocabulary can really help kids replace some of that more aggressive or tantrum type behavior. Ways to do that is really helping the kids label their own feelings. So when you recognize either during playtime, you know, celebrating and saying, wow, like your eyes are wide, you're jumping up and down, you must be excited. You're feeling excited right now. Also working on labeling different emotions that you might see throughout the day, such as being worried about something. Really explaining to the kids what their face might look like, what their body is telling you, can help them develop that skill of recognizing their own emotional states. It's also great to express your own feelings. I think as adults, we sometimes are hesitant to always share how we're feeling with kids, but it's okay sometimes if you're doing it in a supportive way to say, I'm feeling frustrated right now, or I have a problem right now that I need to solve. It's okay to kind of talk to your kids about emotions you might be feeling. As long as you're, again, using that language that is appropriate for the kids' understanding, you're using it in supportive teaching way of expressing, I feel mad right now, I feel frustrated, I need to take a break. That's really helping kids to learn that process of labeling their emotions and then what to do next. You can play games, you can sing songs. You know, if I'm happy and I know it, if you're sad and you know it, if you're mad and you know it, you can really go through that type of song and work on that. Reading books or even in television shows, talking about how that character might feel in the book. Talking that through with the kid and the scenario that was in the story and how the characters might feel helps kids develop that skill of labeling their emotions. So another piece is that sometimes kids are going to be not calm. We're going to get to the place where our emotional brain has taken over, a kid's emotional brain has taken over, and they don't really have access to their thinking skills at that time. So if your kid is a child, either in your classroom or your home, if you're a parent or teacher, thinking about having a place when a kid is emotionally dysregulated to go to take a break. This break space, it doesn't have to be something big or something elaborate, but it is, if it's something your kid might benefit from, important to have a space that's designated as a calm down area. So it can be a beanbag, it can be a chair, it can be a pile of pillows, it can be a corner in their room or your living room, somewhere small that they know that they can take time to calm down, and that space doesn't have another function, ideally. It's not their bed. It's a place where they know that they can calm down and that adults won't require other things of them. We won't be placing other expectations on them other than that they're staying safe in that spot. So again, it could be a little tent if that seems like a positive choice for your kid, but it could just be a beanbag. You want to teach the kid to use that area before they're upset. So once you implement this idea of having a calm down space, go through the process of explaining what the calm down space is, talking about when I feel big feelings, I can take a break to calm down. Again, labeling that for yourself. If you are upset, you know, I'm feeling upset right now, I need to take a break to calm my body. You do want to limit interactions when the kid is in the calm down space. A calm down space is ideally somewhere that doesn't have a lot of distractions. It might have some, you know, calming stuffed animals, maybe a sensory fidget, something that the kid likes to interact with, a blanket, a pillow with sequins on it, something that will help them feel calm, but not something that's a major distraction like, you know, a video games or having lots of toys in that area. Once you've taught the child to use that calm down area and they are using it effectively, you always want to do a check-in with the kid once they're calm and in that area. So give them the space to calm their body, but then make sure you connect with them afterwards so that you can talk over and reestablish your relationship in a calm way. So another technique that a lot of our teachers talk about in our classrooms, and we may have shared with some families, like you may already know of Tucker Turtle. So Tucker is a little turtle that gets upset, and when he feels upset, he takes time to tuck and think. So this is a process we can teach kids. There's a great social story that goes along with it. There's a whole little story about Tucker. As we referenced, there are a whole bunch of resources that we're going to make available to you afterwards. This is one of them. it's teaching the process of stopping, taking a deep breath, and really giving yourself time to calm down before you make a decision about what might come next. So it's teaching that technique of stopping before going into, like, recognizing there's a problem or something that you need to act on, but making sure you take the time to tuck and think. So I talked about a little bit with Tucker, but one of the first strategies I often talk with parents about when they do have a kid that is really struggling with emotional regulation is learning a deep breathing technique. When people, kids, adults, are faced with a situation that is frustrating to them, makes them angry, is overwhelming to them, really scares them, your automatic nervous system kind of kicks in. So your body is also getting elevated. You have a physiological reaction. Deep breathing is the only part of your automatic nervous system that you can actually control, that people can control, is that you can take a deep breath and it can help change your body's reaction to those stressful situations. So we work with kids a lot on controlling their breath and learning a deep breathing technique. Again, introducing this when the kid is calm, continue practicing a deep breathing technique, for a few weeks even, before you would ever recommend or try and help support the kid in taking a deep breath when they're upset, really teaching that skill for a few weeks or days to help them develop it. So this is one example, and the visual again is available in that folder we're going to send out. It's smelling a flower and then blowing a pinwheel. Or we also do smell a flower, blow out a candle. I like the pinwheel because you can use the prop to really practice that if you have a live pinwheel. The candle is also great though because you can just hold up a finger and blow out the candle. The kid can practice blowing out your finger candle. Here's just a little sequence on helping kids calm down. This could be something you could even post in your calm down area. We have it in our classrooms and in our cozy cubes that we have as calm down spaces in our classrooms. So it's just a simple process of how we calm down. You put your hands on your tummy, you tell yourself to stop, you try and recognize your feelings, and then you take deep belly breaths. Because really that breath is going to be that time to process and then move on to problem solving. There are lots of different breathing techniques. At school, we do have those Hoberman yoga balls that expand and contract, and that's a way to practice controlling your breath, is breathing with that ball that expands and contracts. I also have talked with some parents about practicing by lying down on the ground and having a little stuffed animal that you put on your belly and watching it raise and lower to really see that your belly is filling with air. A lot of kids respond to volcano breaths just because it's fun, which is really that you are exploding into a deep breath and let it out through that lava explosion. Whatever your kid is really into, you can make it into a breathing technique. Rainbows, dragons, there's lots of ways to make it engaging to practice that deep breathing technique so that eventually once the kid has that skill built up, they can use it when they are feeling upset and you can model it for them. So this is one of our last techniques, and it really is something that you would probably want to implement if you already have a kid that has some of that emotional vocabulary. It's a little bit more advanced, but it is a great strategy if your child is one that's really at that place where they know they can tell you they're mad. I mean, it's always a celebration for me when a kid screams at me that they're mad instead of just screaming at me. It's like, okay, they know that they're mad. Now we can work with this. I can celebrate, okay, if they've learned some of their emotional vocabulary, it helps us decide what's next. But if they kind of are at that stage, then relaxation thermometer can be helpful. It can help show the kid that, when they're mad, their body is in the red, their body might be feeling lots of tension, they might be moving quickly, and to really watch themselves going down that relaxation thermometer by taking deep breaths and be able to label when they're in the blue area. Children who learn to regulate their emotions are going to have an easier time making friends over time. They can handle disappointment better over time and can relate more successfully with peers and adults. It just also helps kids learn that skill of impulse control, because they can recognize, I can take a deep breath, calm myself down a little bit before I react to whatever that impulse is I'm thinking about. And here is just a quote for us all to think about a little bit. The quote is, "If there is anything that we wish to change in the child, we should first examine it and see whether it is not something that could be better be changed in ourselves." So part of this, a lot of what we talked about today, is strategies that we as adults will use to change our behavior, because ultimately changing our behavior can have a really positive impact on kids in helping them develop positive skills and helping maybe take away some of the problem scenarios in our day. So I am hoping and wondering if anyone has any thoughts they would like to share about something that maybe you feel like, after hearing what we had to say today, would either be something that you might want to change based on our presentation today, or something you might want to do differently based on what you heard. I'd love to see that in the chat if any of you have ideas. And Stacy, you can go ahead and go to the next slide as well while people are thinking. And thanks, Bridget, for writing your comment in so that everyone could see it. Rephrasing questions as statements when it's time to change tasks. That's a really great one, and something that all of us can be more aware of, those implied questions that really we don't want them to make the choice of no, but they often do. Someone is saying they really like the suggestion of music as part of a transition, using timers, giving more choices and regulation techniques. Yeah, these are all great. So I just put up our contact information here. If any of you have follow-up questions about the training today, you're welcome to email us. If you have questions right now, I should have said that first. If you have questions right now, you can put them in the chat or the question and answer section ideally. And we might be able to answer a couple of those questions. But otherwise, you will have our email addresses. It's listed on there, you know, who is the school psychologist in each of our service areas. But really, you can email any of us and we'll make it work. And you're also welcome, if you are within our program, have a child in EIECSE services or a provider that work with our program, to connect with the child service provider if there's any additional supports that they might be able to offer.
This is Stacy. I'd just like to offer our thanks to our interpreters. Thank you so much for providing that service for us this evening.